Okay, so it's about 8 weeks since I gave birth to my daughter, and I thought I would do a video about all the things I wish I knew about giving birth in the public system in Australia. I've got some dot points. The first thing I wish that I was confident in before giving birth was that the healthcare system in Australia is excellent. Now, this obviously depends on where you're giving birth, what hospital you're going through, but from my personal experience, I live in a rural town in Australia, and it was really good care. Most of the midwives and doctors that I encountered were really caring and genuinely seemed like they had my best interest at heart. I realized that some people have had a different experience, but I think it's important to remember that generally speaking, the healthcare in Australia is some of the best in the world. You can have a confidence about the care that you're getting, but also I would say, and this is my second point, be aware of some of the tension in the system. So what I mean by that is that there are people who slip through the cracks with any industry, whether you're a teacher or an engineer. Some people have gotten their degree really scraping through with their grades. And so there is obviously quite a big spectrum of the level of education some of the practitioners have, the amount of professional development that they've engaged in since they graduated. I think it's really important to not just blindly trust whoever you're speaking to about what their opinion is. Their opinion might be based on a previous experience or some literature that came out 10 years ago. So I think it's just good to be really informed by yourself. Yes, the healthcare is really good, but also just be mindful of some of the tensions in the system. Another point on that is that sometimes midwives and doctors have really separate agendas. For example, your midwife might be very holistic and natural and, you know, just trust your body, and your doctor might be very inclined to want to do some sort of medical intervention. One thing that I was really happy that I did was that from the very beginning of starting my care, I said to my midwife that if there is a indication for some sort of medical intervention, I want that to be prioritized. So I didn't want there to be tension in the delivery room about the doctor saying this, the midwife saying that, the midwife saying, no, natural, and the doctor saying, no, she needs this. If that was happening, I wanted to go with the doctor's perspective. That was my own preference. So if you're someone who wants to be really natural, then from the beginning, I think you just need to say to whoever's doing your care, I prefer the natural solution to whatever problem comes up. And hopefully that is followed on the day. Another piece of advice that I wish I knew was to know what tests need to be done in your pregnancy and when, so that you can organize your referrals. This probably sounds really obvious. A lot of the tests in pregnancy are time dependent. So they need to happen, for example, between your 6 weeks and 8 weeks. So if you haven't gotten that referral in time, then you're probably going to be paying extra money to get a last minute GP appointment so that you can get your referral. And then when you book in your test through some sort of radiology department, often the departments that might be bulk billed are booked in for a long time. So if you're not quick to book in, then you're going to be paying extra. The amount of money I spent during my pregnancy was so much more than some friends in different parts of Australia, because where I live, there is such a long waiting list for the bulk billed radiology departments, and I didn't get my referrals in time from my doctor. So by the time I got my referrals, it was a little bit last minute, and then I had to pay for all of my tests. Whereas some of my other friends, their GPs gave their referrals really quickly, so they could call up the radiology departments and book in to those that do bulk billed tests. I would say if your doctor is willing, from the moment you find out you're pregnant, ask them to do all of the referrals that you need for all of the tests straight away, so that it's on you to book in those tests, because sometimes your GP might be booked out as well. And so say you realize I have that 20-week ultrasound coming up. If you don't have your referral, now you need to go to your GP and get your referral. What if your GP is booked out past the 20-week mark? And so now you have to see a different GP, or maybe you do see your GP, but by the time they give you the referral, the bulk billed place is booked up. So I hope that all makes sense. Basically, just have your referrals ready and book in your tests as early as you can. And also call around a few different radiology companies. Some of them will be private, but some of them might bulk bill. For example, Queensland X-Ray, even though it's all one company, there was different branches that would bulk bill, but all of those were booked out. So I had to pay for each one of my ultrasounds. There wasn't one ultrasound that was free, which was really different to my friend. She only paid for one of hers, but I paid for every single one. So do your research, get prepared with your referrals. The next point is don't rely on your health practitioner to take care of every detail for you. In a perfect world, your midwife or GP or doctor would know exactly what you need and when. They would be informing you. They would really take care of everything for you. The reality is that they've got so many patients they're thinking about. They also have their own lives. They've also got their own problems. You are not on the forefront of their mind all the time. And while I do feel like some of my care slipped through the cracks, I also feel like some of that was my problem, in that I kind of relied on them too much to organize my things. For example, the amount of appointments I would have with someone in my care, and they would say, okay, what are you in for again today? And then I wasn't prepared because I didn't really know what they needed to do in that appointment. But go to your appointments knowing this is what I need done today. This is what we need to talk about today. For example, when I was getting up to my due date, I had to bring up to my midwife, hey, can we talk about my birth plan? Can we talk about the few different options? She didn't bring that up. And she probably would have eventually, but also it was quite late in my pregnancy. And if you have to cancel a few appointments because something comes up and then you don't get to speak about something you really wanted, that can really impact your care. So talk about things when you want to talk about it. Bring things up. Don't wait for them to bring things up if you want to discuss something. My next point is your birth plan is important. Some people rolled their eyes and said, oh, you know, good luck to you. You know, you're not going to stick to your plan. The point of a birth plan is not that everything goes according to plan. I think the best thing about having a birth plan is that you do research as to what you want in your birth and why. Number one, it makes you more informed about the consequences of some interventions, why certain things might happen. For example, I had no idea that there was a lot of emergency situations that can happen after your baby is out. I thought once your baby's out, you're golden. But once I had written out my birth plan and sent it to my midwife, she was really great. And she said, look, you probably need to add a few more details about what happens if something happens to you, what you want to happen with your baby. Do you want your husband to be at your baby's side the whole time? Are you okay with your baby having formula if you're in surgery? Or are you okay with them pumping your breast milk while you're under anesthetic to give to your baby? All of these things, which I didn't realize were things to even think about, those conversations wouldn't have come up had I not given her a birth plan to kind of talk through. Another thing is that my birth plan was absolutely respected during my labor process. In fact, I kind of went against my birth plan. At one point, I was really wanting an epidural, but my midwife said, no, you wanted to try the happy gas before you tried the epidural. While I was really going through labor, I kind of forgot about that. And so had I not had a birth plan, she would have said, yep, let's do the epidural. I tried the happy gas. That ended up being my saving grace. And that's how I got through my entire labor. And that wouldn't have happened had I not had a birth plan. Obviously, don't be too strict on your birth plan. Some things didn't happen for me that I really wanted with my birth, but all in all, I think if you don't have a birth plan, you're not really informed about what the potential outcomes might be. I also have someone really close to me who didn't have a birth plan, and therefore she was kind of at the mercy of the midwives and the doctors in her room that day. And this kind of relates to the previous point I made. The doctors really wanted to give her an episiotomy, whereas the midwives did not want to give her an episiotomy, and there was a lot of tension in the room, and the midwives wouldn't let the doctor get the woman's consent to do the episiotomy, and therefore when she pushed the baby out, she tore to shreds, and she's now got quite a lot of long-term issues with her pelvic floor. And I mean, everything is 2020 in hindsight, but because of that story, in my birth plan I wrote, if there's an indication for an episiotomy, I want it straight away. And therefore, when my midwife saw, okay, things are looking a little bit risky down there, I got an episiotomy. I didn't tear beyond that, and you know, had I not had that in my birth plan, who knows what could have happened. So it's not really about everything going according to plan. Of course, at some point you have to trust that the people in the room are qualified and they are the professionals, but you don't want to rely on them too much that their own personal biases can come into how you experience your birth and labor as well, in my personal opinion. The other recommendation I would do is to try to get into the midwifery group practice as quickly as you can. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the MGP program, but basically it's when you have one midwife for your whole care. They take care of all of your appointments. They travel with you through your pregnancy, and then they're there when you deliver your baby. Normally there's a backup midwife as well. So for example, if your midwife is sick or they're on a protected day off, you will call her, but it will divert to another woman's phone, and you have access to a midwife 24/7 texting, calling, appointments whenever you need, it's really, really, really handy. I was having appointments every 2 weeks, and then they moved to once a week towards the end of my pregnancy. My midwife came to my labor, she's delivered my baby, and I think it just made a really big difference because she knew me, she knew my preferences. I wasn't just a face to her. She knew when to encourage me and when to sort of call me out for being a bit dramatic in labor, and I just feel like it was a really personal experience. With the MGP as well, it books out really, really fast. The moment you have your positive blood test confirming that you're pregnant, you need to make a phone call to whatever system is around you and get on the waiting list. Where I live, it was a self-referral process, so you could call up and put yourself on the waiting list if you had a positive test. I'm not sure if in other places around Australia you need a GP to refer you, I'm not really sure, but once you have a positive pregnancy test, I would be calling up your local place and asking what's the process with getting on the MGP waiting list. They will tell you, and then follow that accordingly. You might not care about that. Maybe you just want to have a midwife every time, you don't care about having the same midwife. That's totally fine, but if you want good continuity of care, then I would really recommend MGP. Another thing is that I had 6 weeks of follow-up appointments post-birth. So for 6 weeks, my midwife was coming in. She also had a lot of information about breastfeeding. She was also a lactation consultant, so that was 2 in 1, very, very handy. But it was also really easy to get referred to different services from her, because early on in my pregnancy, I had a pelvis injury, so she referred me to the physio. So I was getting free physio treatment throughout my pregnancy, which was absolutely amazing. And then postpartum, I've been getting free physio treatment as well because of my pelvic floor weakness. So both of those physio referrals were really, really quick because my midwife just did it straight away on the system. I didn't have to go to a GP and get referred. It was just much easier. So if continuity of care is something important to you, try to get on the MGP list. And if you do want to get on that list, get in as quick as possible, because from what my midwife said, there is a big shortage of midwives who are willing to do that program. Where I live anyway, I don't know if that's the case all around Australia, but I do think it's quite competitive. So get into that straight away. That was everything I put on my list. I feel like there was so many more, so maybe I'll do a part 2. If you have any questions, feel free to put in the comment box. I'm not sure how many people watch this video, probably not very many, but I hope this was helpful. If you like this video, please give me a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. And if you're pregnant in Australia, good luck with your pregnancy and your labor and birth. I have my birth and labor story posted, so if you want to hear how my labor went, feel free to go watch that video. I might do a video as well about how I had a relatively unmedicated birth. I did have the happy gas, as I mentioned, but I didn't have an epidural, and I know that a lot of people do desire to not have an epidural, each to their own, but I might post a video of how I did that, how I got through labor almost without any medication. I'm not sure if the happy gas counts. I think it does count as medication, but anyways, how I got through without getting an epidural. If there's any other questions about labor and childbirth, please let me know. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.